Hello, Johnny Be Good. Or should I say, J-Dog. I want to play a game. In front of you there is a device, and once you realize what this device is, the rules not only then become simple, but they should be self-explanatory. For the last few months you've been reviewing movies, shows, and hating on most horror movies. And while it's something you enjoy and think you're somewhat decent at, you've never taken the time to truly ask yourself if it's these things or you that should be reviewed. So right now I'll be reviewing you. Can you find the little pieces to the puzzle without touching the sides? Will you be good at it? Will you be bad at it? Or will you go and fuck yourself? Make your choice.
Hey. 30 days. 30.
This a movie.
This a movie.
What's up, guys? I'm Johnny Be Good.
And I'm Tom Dahlia.
And Johnny's Be Good Reviews is going to be doing something different but similar to my top 10 family-friendly Halloween movies. Me and Tom Dahlia are going to be bringing you our individual top 10 horror movies. Did that sound like breathing to you? I swear to God that sounded like breathing.
Don't creep me out.
I swear to God it did. I mean, there's pipes and they make noises and stuff. That sounded like breathing. But anyways, this review is similar to my top 10 family-friendly Halloween movie review in a sense that it's a top 10 individually, making it a top 20, but these are not children's movies, they're not for your family, and just don't show them to your kids. So now that I've said all that, let's get started.
Number 20. 2007, David Slade's 30 Days of Night. The film takes place in a small Alaskan town, where for 1 month out of every year, there is no sun. During which this time, vampires come in and take over the town and feed for 30 whole days. Now, the concept is a great story. It's very original. I love that part. The suspense is not, it's kind of lacking. But the sheer cinematography, the setup, the blood, the gore, the look of the vampires, it's just so beautiful in its own macabre way. The end of the movie is what I feel brings out the true message of the film, which is the distance that one is prepared to go to protect the ones that you love.
Number 19. 2001, Steve Beck's 13 Ghosts. This movie is literally about a man-made haunted house. Despite this movie technically not being a scary movie, it definitely makes up for it with its awesomely terrifying and unique ghosts with names such as the Juggernaut, the Hammer, and the Jackal. 13 Ghosts has a good amount of blood and gore, but overall what really sells this movie is its ghosts.
Number 18. 2003, Clive Saunders, Gacy. This film is about the killer John Wayne Gacy, who is known as a loving family man, who dressed up occasionally as clowns to entertain at children's birthday parties, and was convicted of the brutal murder of up to 30 boys. Now, the reason why I find this film so horrifying is the fact that it is real. The graphic depictions of his victims, the monstrous portrayal of Gacy, it's been so horrifying, it's literally haunted me to this day.
Number 17. 2012, Drew Goddard's Cabin in the Woods. This is the Avengers of horror movies, and I'm not just saying that just because Joss Whedon is the director. If you know me, then you know that I'm not the biggest horror movie fan, and one of the main reasons I love Cabin in the Woods is because when I watch a horror movie, most of them anyways, I feel like I can see through them, and it's almost like it's a setup, and therefore it's not scary to me. But in a case like this, it's kind of okay that I see it as a setup. Cabin in the Woods sets itself up to be the kind of horror movie that I'm not exactly into. The whole kids on vacation, sex, drugs, alcohol, but end up getting chased through the woods and brutally murdered by a psycho killer. It's just not my cup of tea. But as this movie unwinds, you slowly start to realize that there's so much more going on than what you think.
16. 1980, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. This film is about Jack Torrance, a writer who agrees to take care of a hotel during the off-season. Along with his wife and son, they become isolated in the hotel and discover that it has a violent past. Haunted by spirits, Jack is turned against his family and into a psychotic killer. What I love about this movie is the sheer visual imagery that Kubrick is able to give off with his own stylistic imagery of directing. And of course, Jack Nicholson. I mean, let's admit it, Jack knows crazy.
Number 15. 1992, Sam Raimi's Army of Darkness. Now, you're not a man unless you at least know of the legendary All That Is Man, Ash Williams. Army of Darkness is about Ash Williams accidentally getting transported back to 1300 AD, where he must battle an army of the dead and retrieve the Necronomicon so he can return home. I remember trying to watch the Evil Dead movies with my brother and my cousin when I was younger, and I remember them saying that these movies were somewhat funny, but I did not find them funny. I was absolutely horrified of those movies, so I didn't really watch them much. But I remember when Army of Darkness first came out, I thought it looked so awesome, and eventually I told myself I was going to man up and watch this entire movie. And although the whole concept of this movie screams horror, it really came off to me as more of a hilariously epic action-adventure. The main reason I love Army of Darkness is because it broke the rules of horror movies and was more funny to me than anything, which is why it will forever hold its spot as the king of dark comedies.
Number 14. 2003, Marcus Nispel's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This film takes place in a small town called Travis County, where a group of young adults on their way to a concert cross paths with a family of cannibals. Being picked off one by one, the young kids must find a way out of this small town of blood and gore. Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an old story that's been told in many different versions. However, this one is my favorite. Along with the menacing Leatherface, R. Lee Remy, I feel like, is the true powerhouse of the film. He's gross. He's terrifying. He just plain leaves a bad taste in your mouth. The rest of the characters in the film basically only serve one purpose, and that's to add bodies to the foundation, which I love.
Number 13. 1986. Frank Oz's Little Shop of Horrors. This movie almost made its way onto my top 10 family-friendly Halloween movies just because I used to watch it with my family all the time. But this is about a plant that eats people, so just hearing that, I think you can understand why, as a kid, I was pretty scared of this movie. I grew up loving Rick Moranis because he played in other movies such as Ghostbusters and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. But another reason I love this movie is because my dad also had an actor and comedian that he grew up with that became one of his favorites. And not only do I love Steve Martin, but he's absolutely hilarious in this movie. The main thing I love about this movie is that it has emotion to it, it's a love story, it's a musical, it's funny, and it's scary at times. And putting all those genres of movies together in one movie could not have been an easy task.
Number 12. 1998, Joe Chappelle's Phantoms. Based on the sci-fi horror novel by Dean Koontz, the story takes place in a small town called Snowfield, Colorado. A doctor and her sister arrive only to find out that something horrible has happened in this town. With half the town missing and the other half dead, with the help of sheriff and his deputies from another town over, they begin to try and unravel the mystery of what's happened. As they continue to try and unravel the mystery that has happened in this town, more and more unexplainable and strange things begin to happen. The beauty of this film is how true it stays to the book. The graphic images are subtle, but where the true horror in this film lies is the ability to play on the paranoia and the imagination of the viewers. There isn't a whole lot more I can say on the film without giving too much away or telling the whole story entirely, but I will recommend this one highly. Check it out.
Number 11. 2006, James Gunn's Slither. This movie is about a small town being taken over by an alien plague. And yes, I cosplayed as Michael Rooker because Michael Rooker cosplayed as me. This movie has zombies, it has aliens, it has Nathan Fillion, and it has monsters that will straight up make you want to puke. I can't help it, guys. I just absolutely love dark comedies, but this will be the last dark comedy on my list. As I'm sure some of you also noticed that this director is another successful Marvel movie director. But why I love James Gunn so much is because even with a dark, grotesque movie like this man will always make you laugh. The main reason I love this movie is, aside from the laughs, the gore, and the horror, this movie might compete with one other movie on my list as the most disgusting movie I've ever seen. But we do have Elizabeth Banks to make up for it, and she's certainly not the grossest thing to look at.
Number 10, 2010, Michael Winterbottom's A Killer Inside Me. Now, I know this isn't really considered a horror movie, but you have got to check this one out. The small West Texas deputy sheriff, Lou Ford, is a well-liked, well-respected man about town. What the people of this town aren't aware of is that Lou is a violent sociopath with a taste for brutal masochism and murder. The role of Lou Ford is portrayed by Casey Affleck. His ability to transform himself into a heartless monster of a man, it's just terrifying. I mean, it was so breathtaking when I saw this film. I recommend seeing this one no matter what you think. This movie is brutal.
Number 9. I apologize if I butchered this name, but 2007, Juan Carlos Fresnadillo's 28 Weeks Later. 6 months after the rage virus was inflicted on the population of Great Britain, the U.S. Army helps to secure a small area of London for survivors to repopulate and start again. But not everything goes to plan. This is not a survival movie. This is a movie about society's last hope. Eventually, somewhere in the movie, a cure introduces itself. And from that moment on, it does not matter if every single person in the movie dies, just not this one person that contains a cure. This is a virus movie, and while some people would argue that it's a zombie movie, technically the infected do not eat the people, they just beat the shit out of them and spread the virus through spitting up blood and biting. I apologize if I'm giving too much away, but by far one of my favorite moments in this movie is when the spread of the infected becomes so vast that the military considers everyone infected, making it to where the people that are supposed to be saving and protecting us more of an enemy than the infected. Another fun thing I like to do with this movie is, me being the Marvel fan that I am, I like to think that the Avengers Hawkeye Clint Barton has retired from the Avengers, and this is how he chooses to spend the rest of his days.
Number 8. 2003, Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. Two young couples go out in search of a rumored legend called Dr. Satan. The couples come face to face with a family of murderous cannibals who kidnap them and begin their acts of torture, rape, mutilation, what have you, you name it. Rob Zombie truly showed us what he was made of when he debuted this gem with his raw, gut-wrenching, just horrific, no-holds-barred type of filming. The carnage in this film is ridiculous. There's a reason why it's called House of a Thousand Corpses. It is truly a film which is hard to watch, but impossible to look away from.
Number 7. 2007, Frank Darabont's The Mist. The writers of this movie knew exactly what they were doing. This movie is about a strange mist that covers a town and forces a group of citizens to seek refuge in a supermarket. But they soon discover that there are things inside of the mist, and not only are they not human, but they are not of this world. Without giving too much away, one of my favorite moments in this movie involves a rope and a badass biker. And the scene is so intense, and it doesn't take any jump scares or good CGI or any monsters. Hell, you don't even see a monster in that moment. All it takes is a group of people, a rope, some good imagining, and some great writing. One thing I look for in all of my horror movies, out of the few horror movies that I love, is a sense of no hope at the end. Even if it's small, just something that assures you that our hero or survivor isn't out of the clear just yet. And The Mist takes that aspect so much further that I can see why some people would say this is the worst movie of all time. In my opinion, it does not make it a bad movie. It's just as far from a happy ending as you can possibly get.
Number 6. 2000, Tarsem Singh's The Cell. This film is about a serial killer who takes pleasure in killing women. Suffering from seizures, he slips into a coma. Desperate to find his latest victim, the FBI seeks help from a psychotherapist and an experimental treatment which allows a person to go into the coma victim's mind. She, along with an FBI agent, must go deep into the mind of the monster to save a life. It truly is how I would picture the mind of a deranged psychopath to be. Plus it has J-Lo in some crazy, sexy-looking bondage outfits, which, who can complain about that?
Number 5. 1982, John Carpenter's The Thing. The Thing is about a group of scientists being confronted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearances of anything it kills. I love animatronics in a horror movie. I just feel like it adds so much more to the scare value of everything. It makes everything so much more horrifying, even in some aspects as if you were able to tell that it is a puppet.
I mean, come on, look at that fucking thing. That is terrifying. This is what true nightmares are made of.
I honestly feel as if CGI is ruining most horror movies today, and is in fact why I'm not a big horror movie fan in the first place. Some writers and directors don't understand that when you add CGI to a horror movie, and it's not good CGI, you ruin the overall scare value of your entire movie. I can honestly admit that I watched this movie about 3 years ago just because I grew up knowing about this movie but never watching it just because of how horrifying it looked. But eventually, after hearing about something for so long, you have to check it out. And you guys definitely need to check out The Thing. This movie does not focus on jump scares or good CGI. There's no other way of saying it. The monsters in this movie will scare the shit out of you.
Number 4. 1973, William Friedkin's The Exorcist. The young daughter of a famous actress becomes possessed by a demon. Desperate and out of options, she seeks help from a troubled young priest who is beginning to lose his faith. With no knowledge of actually how to perform an exorcism, he finds help in an old priest who is at the end of his era, who actually has performed an exorcism before. The first time I saw this movie, now mind you, I was very, very young, which I guess is the reason why it's instilled such a massive fear into me ever since. The soundtrack alone will send chills up and down your spine. Linda Blair's performance was by far one of the best I have ever seen, in a child actor and adult actor combined. Linda Blair is basically the Princess Leia to my horror films. Linda, if you ever see this, ever, I love you.
Number 3. 2006, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, Alexander Aja's The Hills Have Eyes.
The Hills Have Eyes is about a family that becomes stranded in the desert and then becomes stalked by a group of psychotic people that live in the mountains and far away from civilization.
I'm sure you're all tired of hearing me talk about how I'm not a big horror movie fan, but one of the main reasons I love The Hills Have Eyes, other than it screams Fallout, which is coming out in less than 2 weeks, and I can only hope to maintain the relationship I have with my girlfriend and my reviews. But the horror that happens in this movie only lasts about 20 to 30 minutes. But there's some terrible, very graphic things that happen. I mean, I'm gonna say it, there's rape in this movie, and to this day it's still very hard for me to watch, and there's times that I do have to turn my head. But once the horror is over, the movie then becomes a story about revenge. And the revenge that our hero gets is so fucking sweet. The gore at this point does not make you squeamish. It does not gross you out because you want to see these things. Because if it were you in this situation, you would want to do these things. Maybe I'm a little fucked up for thinking this, but when it comes to someone or something harming the ones that we love, killing or torturing this person or thing not only suddenly becomes okay, but I think some of us actually get off to it. The Hills Have Eyes was originally number 7 on my list, but I watched it the other day just to have it fresh on my mind for this review, and the epic music that is playing when our blood-covered hero is getting a little bit of payback gave me such an immense feeling of triumph, and the chills that ran through my body made me want to scream and punch at the air from excitement. That's how I know when I have a favorite movie. And not only is The Hills Have Eyes one of my all-time favorite horror movies, but it's within my top 20 favorite movies of all time. If you did like this movie and you're a comic book fan like I am, then definitely check out this graphic novel. It tells the origin story of the mutants that live inside of these hills. And be looking for Rob Zombie to turn this graphic novel into a movie because I've been hearing recently that he's going to do so. The last thing I want to say about The Hills Have Eyes is thank you, Wes Craven. Not only for this, but for your many other films, and for being one of the few horror fanatics that truly understood horror. To all film lovers I say, even if it's not your taste, it's very important to acknowledge a legend. And for that, and for you, Mr. Craven, I'd like to have a moment of silence.
Number 2, 2010, Eli Craig's Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. Now let me just say that I know this movie is more humor than it is horror, but it really, really is a good film. It takes the horror genre and it flips it on its head. The film is about a group of college kids that are on their way on a camping trip, and along the way they come across 2 hillbillies, and they begin to die in horrific ways. As it turns out though, they're pretty sweet guys. They're pretty nice. All they want to do is just go fishing, but they keep getting caught up in these misunderstandings and these acts of horrible circumstances, and it makes them look like the killers. So I love that take in this film, because what it does is you never get to see that side of it. What if they are just minding their own business and they just look horrible and scary and creepy, but they're not doing anything wrong? The gore is perfect. The circumstantial setups, well timed, beautiful, perfect. The jokes are hilarious. The writing is spectacular. It has the beautiful Katrina Bowden in it, the talented Alan Tudyk, and the very funny Tyler Labine. I seriously encourage you to check this movie out. Whether you're a horror fanatic or not, this movie has a little bit of something for everybody. It's enjoyable no matter what.
So what is my all-time favorite horror movie, considering how I don't like most horror movies? Well, not only is it a part of one of the biggest horror movie franchises in the world, but my number 1 killer isn't a killer at all. He's a cancer patient. 2005, Darren Lynn Bousman's Saw 2. As much as I rag on horror movies, I've always thought Jigsaw was a badass, and I admire everything he stands for. Saw 2 is obviously the sequel to the first Saw, and it is about a detective and his team trying to rescue 8 people trapped in a maze-like torture chamber created by who I feel is probably the darkest vigilante that ever was, Jigsaw.
For those of you wondering, no, I have not seen every single Saw movie just because I kind of lost interest after the 4th one. But that has never been the case with this movie. This movie is kick-ass, guys. The actors are great. The direction and writing of the movie is great. The blood, the gore, the traps, the horror and all, it's all really, really well done. But what you'll come to learn about me with any and every kind of film is I love a good twist. And not only does this movie have several, but they all go with each other really, really well, and you'll notice them as long as you're paying attention and you're playing by the rules. Jigsaw has always been a dark hero of mine just because he even states in this movie that he's never killed a single person in his life. The choice is entirely up to them. And I absolutely love that aspect of it, because what he's really doing is trying to help all of them. He's just doing it in the worst, but quite possibly the most effective way possible. Maybe deep down some of these people do want to give up on life in general. And in that thought lies Jigsaw's famous line, "Those who do not appreciate life do not deserve life." Our main character in this movie is a cop with an anger problem. And probably my favorite part of the entire movie is how Jigsaw puts the game players' cards on the table and he calmly explains to them what they need to do to fix it. And given the problem our main character faces and the problem he has, I think you can see why it's kind of difficult for him. But in any game that Jigsaw plays, he makes it perfectly clear that if you can't fix your problem by the end of the game, you lose. But as our twists begin to unwind, you begin to understand what was really happening the entire time, and that Jigsaw knew what was going to happen every step of the way. But that's the point of his games. You prove him wrong, and you win. You live. Be sure to check out the first Saw, just because in a lot of moments you won't exactly know what's going on. But more than that, even though it's not as good as the second one, it's still a gore-filled, fantastic horror movie. Again, I will say, no, I have not seen every single Saw movie, but I plan on watching all of them. I lost interest after the 4th one, just because the 3rd one was okay, but then at the 4th one, I guessed the twist ending at the very beginning of the movie, so from then on out, I was just like, these movies are just blood, gore, and cool traps. Like the twists are just it was bad. But I will be watching every single one of them, and then possibly giving them a review depending on how they all make me feel. Probably the main reason Saw 2 is number 1 on my list has nothing to do with anything in the movie at all. A long time ago, someone introduced this movie to me, and you know who you are, along with a lot of other mobster movies, and some of those movies are my favorite movies today. But not only did I absolutely become obsessed with those kinds of movies and movies in general, but Saw 2 showed me that maybe not all horror movies do suck, and that there are actually some pretty damn good ones out there. But most of all, it showed me that I shouldn't give up on horror movies entirely, and in most cases, I should give every film a chance.
I would love to thank you guys for having me on, and J-Dog, Johnny Be Good, for allowing me to do this with you guys. I apologize if I'm not up to par or standards when it comes to this. This is my first time doing something like this. I'm not used to this type of filming. But I promise I'll get better, and I'll slowly improve and everything, and hopefully you guys will still want me around. So, thank you.
As always, guys, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment at the bottom. Tom Dahlia will return whenever we do our individual top 10 monster movies. And for those of you that don't know, I'm Johnny Be Good with Johnny's Be Good Reviews, and let's hope the next movie will be good.